Tyler Brennan sat in the leather chair at gate 23, his 6-year-old daughter Ruby perched beside him, her small hands moving in patterns he barely understood. He watched her sign something, her brown eyes expectant, waiting for his response. But he had nothing. No words. No signs. Just the crushing weight of knowing he'd failed the one person who mattered most. 3 years. 3 years since the diagnosis. 3 years since his wife walked out. 3 years of pretending he was enough, when every day Ruby's world grew quieter and his ability to reach her grew smaller. He knew maybe 20 signs. Hungry. Tired. Bathroom. Stop. The basics that kept her alive but did nothing to let her live. Ruby tried again, her fingers forming shapes near her chest, her face hopeful. Tyler felt his throat tighten. He didn't know what she was saying. He never knew. He smiled weakly and patted her hand, the universal gesture of parents who have given up. Her face fell. She turned away and pulled out her tablet, retreating into the videos that understood her better than her own father did. This was his life now. A multimillion-dollar empire at his fingertips, the respect of every business leader in Seattle, a penthouse view that stretched for miles. But he couldn't talk to his own daughter. He couldn't tell her he loved her in a way she'd actually hear. He couldn't ask her about her day, her dreams, her fears. He was drowning in silence, and he'd convinced himself there was no way out. That's when everything changed. A woman knelt down in front of Ruby, her hands moving in fluid, graceful signs. Ruby's head snapped up, her eyes widening. Then something happened that Tyler hadn't seen in months. Ruby smiled. Really smiled. The kind of smile that lit up her whole face and made her look like the happy toddler she'd been before the world went silent. The woman was beautiful, her skin a rich brown that seemed to glow under the airport's bright lights, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a royal blue cardigan over a white blouse and jeans, and her smile was warm and genuine as she signed with Ruby. Back and forth they went, hands flying, Ruby giggling at something the woman said. Tyler felt something crack open inside his chest. Jealousy. Gratitude. Shame. All of it at once. This stranger was doing in seconds what he hadn't managed in years. She was reaching his daughter. The woman glanced up at him, and her expression shifted to understanding. Not judgment. Just a quiet, knowing sadness that made Tyler want to disappear into the airport floor. She stood and extended her hand. I'm Carolina Rivers, she said, her voice gentle. Your daughter just told me about her favorite cartoon. She's wonderful. Tyler shook her hand, his own feeling clumsy and useless. Tyler Brennan. Thank you. I can't. You don't sign much, Carolina said softly. It wasn't an accusation. Just a fact. No, Tyler admitted, the words scraping out of him like broken glass. I don't. Ruby tugged on Carolina's sleeve, signing something else. Carolina's face softened, and she signed back before looking at Tyler again. She wants to know if I can sit with you both until your flight boards. Would that be okay? Tyler nodded, not trusting his voice. Carolina sat down on Ruby's other side, and immediately the two of them were deep in conversation. Hands moving, faces animated, a whole world of communication Tyler couldn't access. He watched them, feeling like an outsider in his own daughter's life. Because that's exactly what he was. Have you ever felt invisible to the person you love most? Have you ever realized too late that you've been failing them every single day? If this story is hitting close to home, or if you've ever struggled to connect with someone important, please subscribe and comment below. Tell me, what would you do if you couldn't talk to your own child? Your thoughts matter and I'd love to hear them. The announcement crackled over the speakers. Flight 847 to Seattle, delayed another hour due to mechanical issues. Tyler sighed and checked his phone. Emails piled up, meetings he'd miss, deals that needed his attention. But for once he couldn't bring himself to care. His eyes kept drifting back to Ruby and Carolina, watching the way his daughter's face came alive with expression. She's been learning ASL since she was 2, Carolina said, noticing his stare. American Sign Language. It's her first language. I tried, Tyler said quietly. When we first found out she was deaf. I bought books. Downloaded apps. But work got busy and my ex-wife said she'd handle it and then she left and He trailed off. The excuses sounded hollow even to his own ears. Carolina's expression remained kind, but there was a firmness in her eyes. It's not too late. I don't know if I can learn it. I'm 42. My brain doesn't work like it used to. That's what every parent says. Then they learn because they have to. Because their child deserves it. She paused, then added, I can teach you if you want. The basics at least. Tyler looked at her, searching for the catch. The angle. In his world, no one offered help without wanting something in return. But Carolina's face showed only genuine kindness. Why would you do that? Because I've been where Ruby is. My daughter Bria is deaf too. She's 7. And I've seen too many kids grow up feeling like their parents can't be bothered to learn their language. It breaks something in them. Carolina's voice softened. I don't want that for Ruby. Ruby tugged on Carolina's arm again, and Carolina signed something that made Ruby clap her hands together. Then Carolina turned to Tyler. Ruby just asked if you're going to learn to sign. I told her I'd teach you if you want it. She's very excited about that idea. Tyler felt his chest tighten again. His daughter wanted this. Wanted him to try. How could he say no to that? Yes, he said, the word coming out firm and clear. Please. Teach me. I'll do whatever it takes. Carolina smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Good. Then let's start now. We've got an hour to kill. She pulled out a small notebook from her bag and clicked open a pen. On the first page, she drew simple stick figures demonstrating hand positions. First rule, Carolina said. Don't be afraid to mess up. Ruby won't judge you for trying. She'll just be happy you're making the effort. Tyler nodded, leaning in to see the drawings. Let's start with the basics. Things you probably should have learned 3 years ago, but better late than never. There was no meanness in her tone, just honesty. This is, I love you. Carolina demonstrated, extending her thumb, index finger and pinky while tucking in her middle and ring fingers. Tyler copied her, his hand feeling awkward and stiff. Good. Now try it toward Ruby. Tyler turned to his daughter. Ruby was watching him, her eyes wide and attentive. He made the sign, his hand shaking slightly. Ruby's face broke into the biggest smile he'd seen in months. She signed back, the same gesture, her small hand more graceful than his. She said it back. Carolina translated unnecessarily. Tyler had understood that much. For the next 40 minutes, Carolina taught him more signs. Hello. Thank you. Sorry. Beautiful. Happy. Sad. What? Meet. Each one Tyler practiced over and over until his hands ached. Ruby helped, giggling when he got things wrong and clapping when he got them right. This is eat, Carolina showed him, bringing her fingertips to her mouth. And this is drink. They're similar but different. See? Tyler mimicked her movements, focusing hard. He'd built a company from nothing, negotiated deals worth millions, given presentations to hundreds of people. But this felt harder than all of that combined. Every sign mattered. Every gesture was a word he'd denied his daughter for too long. You're doing really well, Carolina said after a while. Most people don't pick it up this fast. I have good motivation. Tyler glanced at Ruby, who was practicing signs on her own, her little fingers forming the shapes Carolina had taught him. What do you do for work? Carolina asked. I run a tech company. Software development, mostly for healthcare systems. Keeps me busy. Too busy, apparently. And Ruby's mother? Tyler's jaw tightened. Patricia. She left when Ruby was diagnosed. Said she couldn't handle raising a disabled child. That was her word. Disabled. Like Ruby was broken somehow. Carolina's expression hardened. She's not disabled. She's deaf. There's a difference. Deaf people have their own language, their own culture. Ruby isn't broken. She just communicates differently. The words hit Tyler like a slap, but not a cruel one. More like a wake-up call. He'd been thinking of Ruby's deafness as something wrong, something to fix, rather than just a part of who she was. I've been doing this all wrong, he said quietly. Yes, Carolina agreed. But you're here now. That counts for something. Another announcement came through. Flight 847 now boarding. Tyler felt an unexpected surge of disappointment. He didn't want this lesson to end. Didn't want to go back to being alone with Ruby in their silent apartment. Where are you headed? Carolina asked as they gathered their things. Seattle. Home. You. Same. I teach at the Washington School for the Deaf. Bria and I live in Redmond. Tyler stood, helping Ruby with her backpack. Would it be okay if I asked for your number? To continue the lessons? Carolina didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and handed it to him. Put yours in. I'll text you tonight. We can set up a schedule. Tyler entered his number, his heart doing something strange in his chest. Relief. Hope. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. They boarded the plane together, Tyler and Ruby in first class, Carolina and her daughter Bria in coach. But before they separated, Ruby signed something to Carolina. Carolina smiled and signed back, then looked at Tyler. She said thank you for being nice to her dad. And she's excited for you to keep learning. Tyler knelt down to Ruby's level. Slowly, carefully he signed "I love you" again. Ruby threw her arms around his neck, and Tyler held her close, feeling tears prick his eyes. When they pulled apart, Carolina was watching them with a soft expression. "You're going to be fine, Tyler. Both of you." As Tyler settled into his seat with Ruby beside him, he pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app. He started writing down every sign Carolina had taught him, determined not to forget a single one. For the first time in 3 years he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could be the father Ruby deserved. Across the aisle and several rows back, Carolina sat with Bria, her own daughter, signing excitedly about the new friend she'd made. Carolina smiled, but her mind was on Tyler. On the desperation in his eyes when he'd admitted he couldn't talk to his daughter. On the determination she'd seen when he'd practiced the signs over and over. She'd meant what she said. She would teach him. Not just because Ruby needed it, though that was reason enough. But because something about Tyler Brennan had gotten under her skin. The way he'd looked at his daughter with such love and such loss. The way he'd accepted her help without pride or hesitation. The way he'd called himself out for failing without making excuses. Maybe this was the start of something good. For Ruby. For Tyler. And maybe if Carolina let herself hope, for her too. The text came through at 9 that night. Tyler had just gotten Ruby to bed after their usual routine. Bath, pajamas, teeth, a story he read aloud even though she couldn't hear him. He'd always read to her anyway, showing her the pictures, hoping somehow she understood. Now he realized how stupid that was. How much time he'd wasted. His phone buzzed. Carolina's name appeared on the screen. "Hi Tyler. This is Carolina. Are you free tomorrow evening? I can come to your place and we can do a proper lesson. Bring Bria too so Ruby has a friend." Tyler's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Yes, absolutely. What time works for you? I'll make sure I'm home. 6? After dinner? Perfect. I'll order food. What do you and Bria like?" There was a pause, then, "You don't have to do that." "I want to. Please. It's the least I can do." Another pause. "Okay. Pizza is fine. Cheese for Bria, veggie for me." Tyler smiled at his phone. "Done. See you tomorrow." He spent the next day distracted at work. His assistant, Nathan Wong, noticed immediately. "You've checked your watch 6 times in the last 10 minutes, Nathan said, leaning against Tyler's office doorframe. "Hot date?" "No. Well, sort of. Not like that. It's complicated." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You're blushing. I've never seen you blush. Who is she?" Tyler sighed and waved Nathan into the office. They'd been friends since college, business partners for 15 years. If anyone would understand, it was Nathan. "Her name is Carolina. I met her at the airport yesterday. She's teaching me sign language." "For Ruby?" "Yeah. She's deaf too. Her daughter, I mean. And she offered to help. No strings attached. She's coming over tonight." Nathan's expression softened. "That's great, man. You've needed this. Ruby's needed this." "I know. I just hope I don't screw it up." "You won't. You're the most stubborn person I know. When you commit to something, you go all in." Tyler nodded, but the anxiety didn't leave. What if he was too old to learn? What if he couldn't get his hands to move the right way? What if he let Ruby down again? At 5:30 he left work early. At home he ordered the pizza, cleaned the already clean apartment, and changed into jeans and a green button-down shirt. Casual but not too casual. He caught himself in the mirror and laughed at his own ridiculousness. This wasn't a date. Carolina was doing him a favor. A huge, life-changing favor. The doorbell rang at 6 exactly. Tyler opened it to find Carolina in a bright red sweater and black pants, her hair loose around her shoulders this time. Beside her stood Bria, a beautiful little girl with the same warm brown skin and bright eyes as her mother. Ruby appeared at Tyler's elbow, her face lighting up when she saw Bria. The two girls immediately started signing to each other, hands moving fast, both giggling. They ran off toward Ruby's room without a backward glance. "Well, that was easy," Carolina said with a laugh. "Mind if I come in?" "Please." Tyler stepped aside, suddenly aware of how big and empty his apartment felt. "The pizza should be here any minute." Carolina set down her bag and pulled out a thick binder. "I brought some materials. Worksheets, diagrams, videos you can watch. Learning ASL isn't just about memorizing signs. It's about understanding the grammar, the culture, the way deaf people experience the world." Tyler nodded, sitting down at the dining table. "I'm ready. Teach me everything." Carolina smiled. "Okay. But first let's talk about yesterday. Show me what you remember." Tyler went through the signs she'd taught him. He stumbled on a few but most came back. Carolina corrected his hand shapes, adjusting his fingers gently. Her touch was professional but kind, and Tyler found himself hyper-aware of how close she was sitting. "Good," she said. "Really good. You retained more than I expected. Now let's build on that. I want to teach you conversational phrases. Things you can use with Ruby every day." For the next hour they worked through questions and responses. "How was your day? What do you want for dinner? Are you okay? Tell me more." Simple phrases that would open up Ruby's world. The pizza arrived and they called the girls out. Around the table, the four of them ate while Ruby and Bria signed back and forth, occasionally pulling Carolina in to translate something for Tyler. He watched, fascinated, trying to pick up words he recognized. "Bria just told Ruby that she likes her room," Carolina said. And Ruby said thank you and asked if Bria wants to see her stuffed animals. Both girls nodded enthusiastically and ran back to the bedroom. Tyler shook his head in wonder. They just met yesterday and they're already best friends. "That's what happens when kids can actually communicate," Carolina said gently. "Ruby's probably been lonely. Most hearing kids her age don't know ASL." The words stung, but Tyler knew they were true. Ruby's world had been so small, and he'd done nothing to expand it. "Tell me about Bria's father," Tyler said, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry? That's too personal." "It's okay." Carolina wiped her hands on a napkin. "His name was Marcus. We met in college, got married young. When Bria was born deaf, he couldn't handle it. He said he didn't sign up for a defective kid." Her voice hardened on the word defective. "He left when she was 6 months old. Haven't heard from him since." "I'm sorry. That's terrible." "It was. But honestly, Bria and I are better off without him. She deserves people in her life who see her as perfect exactly the way she is." Tyler thought about Patricia, about how she'd said almost the same thing Marcus had. About how he'd let her words influence him, let himself believe Ruby needed to be fixed instead of simply understood. "I've been like him," Tyler admitted. "Not leaving but checking out mentally. Telling myself I was too busy to learn, that Ruby would be fine with basic signs. I've been a coward." Carolina looked at him for a long moment. "The difference is you're here now. You're trying. That matters more than you know." "Does it? 3 years too late. Better 3 years late than never. Ruby's 6. You have years ahead of you to build this relationship. But you have to commit. Really commit. Not just learn a few signs and call it good. You have to immerse yourself in deaf culture. Take Ruby to deaf events. Make sure she has deaf friends and deaf role models. Let her know that being deaf isn't something to overcome but something to celebrate." Tyler absorbed her words, feeling the weight of them. This wasn't going to be easy. It would take time, effort, resources. But when had he ever backed down from a challenge? "I'll do whatever it takes," he said firmly. "Ruby deserves that. Tell me what I need to do and I'll do it." Carolina's expression softened into something that might have been respect. "Okay then. First thing, you need to commit to practicing every single day. Even when you're tired, even when work is crazy. Ruby needs to see that this is a priority." "Done." "Second, I want you to come to some classes at my school. Meet other deaf kids and adults. See what Ruby's community looks like." "When?" "I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can observe. Bring Ruby too. She'll love it. We'll be there this Thursday." "Third, we need to set up regular lessons. At least 3 times a week. You're starting from basically nothing, so we have a lot of ground to cover." "I'll pay you. Whatever your rate is." Carolina shook her head. "I'm not doing this for money, Tyler." "I know. But you're giving up your evenings, your time with Bria. Let me compensate you. Please." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. But only if you promise to actually do the work. I'm not wasting my time if you're not serious." "I promise." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." They settled on a rate, and Tyler made a note to have his accountant set up payments. Then they went back to the lesson, Carolina teaching him more complex phrases, correcting his grammar, showing him how to use facial expressions to add meaning to his signs. When 9 o'clock rolled around, Carolina called Bria out. The little girl hugged Ruby goodbye, both of them making plans in sign language that Tyler couldn't follow yet. He walked Carolina and Bria to the door. "Thank you," he said, "for all of this. I don't know how to repay you. Just be the dad Ruby needs. That's all the payment I need." Carolina paused, her hand on the doorframe. "You're going to be good at this, Tyler? I can tell." After they left, Tyler went to Ruby's room. She was already in her pajamas, brushing her teeth in the attached bathroom. When she came out, Tyler sat on the edge of her bed and practiced the new signs Carolina had taught him. "Did you have fun today?" he signed slowly. Ruby's eyes widened. She nodded enthusiastically, then signed back something Tyler didn't understand. He pulled out his phone and opened the ASL dictionary app Carolina had recommended. After a minute, he figured out Ruby had said, "Bria is my best friend." Tyler signed back, "I'm glad. She can come over again soon." Ruby clapped her hands then signed, "You're getting better at signing." Tyler understood maybe half of that, but the smile on Ruby's face told him everything he needed to know. He tucked her in, signed "I love you," and watched her sign it back before turning off the light. In his own room, Tyler lay awake for a long time, his hands moving through the signs he'd learned, committing them to muscle memory. Tomorrow he'd wake up early and practice before work. He'd watch the videos Carolina had recommended during his lunch break. He'd practice more after dinner. This was his life now. And for the first time in 3 years he felt like he was moving in the right direction. Thursday evening arrived faster than Tyler expected. He'd practice signs every spare moment, his hands moving through the shapes even during meetings. Nathan caught him more than once, signing to himself under his desk. "You're obsessed," Nathan said with a grin. "I have to be. I've got 3 years to make up for." Tyler left work at 4 to pick up Ruby from school. She attended a mainstream elementary school with an ASL interpreter, but Carolina had suggested moving her to the Washington School for the Deaf next year. Tyler was starting to think that might be the right choice. They arrived at Carolina's school at 5. The building was modern, bright, with wide hallways and lots of natural light. Students' artwork covered the walls, and Tyler noticed that many of the pieces incorporated hand shapes and signs into their designs. Carolina met them in the lobby, Bria bouncing beside her. She wore a green dress today, vibrant against her skin, and her hair was pulled into a high ponytail. She looked younger like this, less like the serious teacher and more like someone Tyler wanted to know better. "Welcome," Carolina signed and spoke simultaneously. "Ready to see what real ASL looks like?" Tyler nodded, suddenly nervous. Ruby grabbed Bria's hand and the two girls ran ahead, clearly comfortable in this space. Carolina led him to a classroom where about 15 adults sat in a circle. All ages, all backgrounds, but all with one thing in common. They were learning ASL. "This is my evening class for parents and family members," Carolina explained. "Most of them have deaf children or deaf relatives. They're at different levels, but everyone's here for the same reason you are." Tyler found a seat next to a woman who introduced herself as Jennifer Park. Her son was 8 and had been deaf since birth. "First time?" Jennifer asked kindly. "Is it that obvious?" She laughed. "You've got that deer-in-headlights look. Don't worry. We've all been there. Carolina's a great teacher. You'll pick it up." The class started and Tyler was immediately overwhelmed. Carolina moved through signs at a pace that seemed impossible to follow. But then she slowed down, breaking each sign into components, showing the hand shape, the movement, the location. She used videos, demonstrations, and had students practice with partners. Tyler paired with Jennifer and they stumbled through introductions. "My name is Tyler. I have one daughter. Her name is Ruby. She is 6 years old." Jennifer corrected his hand shapes, encouraging him when he got frustrated. Around the room, other students were doing the same, supporting each other, laughing at mistakes, celebrating successes. Carolina moved through the room, stopping to help individuals. When she reached Tyler, she knelt beside him, watching him sign. "Your hand shape for daughter is close, but curve your fingers a bit more. Like this." She demonstrated and Tyler copied her. "Better. And remember, facial expressions are part of the grammar. You can't just move your hands and keep a blank face. Show emotion." Tyler tried again, exaggerating his expressions. Carolina nodded approvingly. "Much better. You're a fast learner. I have good motivation." He glanced through the classroom window where Ruby and Bria played with other deaf children in the next room. Ruby looked happier than he'd seen her in months. "She's thriving," Carolina said, following his gaze. "That's what happens when kids are around people who speak their language. They blossom." After class, Carolina invited Tyler to stay for the deaf community social hour. Parents and children mingled in the cafeteria, everyone signing, everyone connected. Tyler felt like he'd stepped into another world. A world where Ruby wasn't different, where her deafness wasn't a disability but simply a characteristic. A deaf man in his 30s approached Tyler, signing. Tyler panicked, not understanding. Carolina appeared at his elbow. "This is Terrell Johnson. He's one of our teachers. He says welcome and he's glad to see Ruby's father here." Tyler fumbled through a thank you. Terrell smiled patiently and signed something else. Carolina translated. He says don't worry about being perfect. Just keep showing up. That's what matters most. Tyler nodded, signing thank you again. Terrell gave him a thumbs up and moved on. Everyone here is so kind, Tyler said to Carolina. The deaf community takes care of its own. And they're always happy to see hearing parents making the effort. Too many don't. She paused. I see this a lot in my work. Hearing parents who refuse to learn, who think their deaf kids should just adapt to the hearing world. But that's backwards. The parents should adapt. The parents should meet their kids where they are. I wish I'd understood that sooner. You understand it now. That's what counts. They stood there for a moment watching Ruby play. She was in the middle of a group of deaf kids, all signing and laughing, completely at ease. Tyler felt his chest tighten with emotion. I've been robbing her of this, he said quietly. All this time she could have had friends who understood her. A community that accepted her. And I kept her isolated because I was too lazy to learn her language. Hey. Carolina touched his arm gently. You can't change the past. You can only change what you do now. And you're doing it. You're here. You're learning. You're giving Ruby access to her community. That's huge. Tyler looked at her, this woman who barely knew him but who decided to help anyway. Why are you doing this? Really? You could spend your evenings relaxing, spending time with Bria. Instead, you're here teaching me, taking time out of your life for my kid. Carolina was quiet for a moment, then said, because I know what it's like to be Ruby. I grew up with hearing parents who never learned to sign. They expected me to lip read, to speak, to fit into their world. I didn't have what Ruby has. I didn't have a dad willing to learn, willing to change. She paused. Wait, you didn't know I'm deaf? Tyler stared at her. You're deaf? But you speak so clearly. You hear everything I say. I'm hard of hearing technically. I lost most of my hearing at age 5 from meningitis. I wear hearing aids and I had years of speech therapy. But my first language is ASL. It's who I am. She smiled at his shocked expression. Did you think only born deaf people are part of the deaf community? I don't know what I thought. I'm sorry. I have so much to learn. Yes, you do. But you're learning. That's the important part. Carolina checked her watch. It's getting late. Bria has school tomorrow and I'm sure Ruby needs to get to bed. They collected the girls, who protested loudly in sign language about leaving. Tyler understood enough to get the gist. They wanted 5 more minutes. He signed back, no time to go, and Ruby pouted but obeyed. In the parking lot, Carolina walked them to Tyler's car. Same time next week? Actually, I was hoping we could do our regular lesson tomorrow. At my place. If that's still okay. Of course. 6 o'clock? Perfect. And Carolina? Tyler met her eyes. Thank you. For everything. For being patient with me. For giving Ruby this gift. You're giving her the gift, Tyler? I'm just helping. Carolina squeezed his arm and walked to her own car. On the drive home, Tyler practiced signs with Ruby. He asked her about her day and she told him in signs he mostly understood. When he didn't understand, he asked her to repeat, to slow down. She did, patiently, like she was the teacher and he was the student. At home, Tyler spent another hour watching ASL videos before bed. His hands ached from practice, but it was a good ache. The ache of progress. The ache of becoming the father Ruby deserved. The next evening, Carolina arrived with Bria and an armful of materials. Tyler had ordered Chinese food this time, having asked Carolina earlier what she liked. She texted back a list and Tyler had ordered one of everything. You didn't have to get so much, Carolina said, eyeing the containers spread across the dining table. I wanted to make sure there was something you'd like. They ate together, the 4 of them, while Ruby and Bria chattered in sign language about their day at school. Tyler caught about 30% of the conversation, which felt like a victory. After dinner, the girls disappeared into Ruby's room again, and Tyler and Carolina settled at the table for the lesson. She'd brought a new workbook, more advanced than the first one. Tonight we're going to work on grammar, Carolina announced. ASL has its own grammatical structure. It's not just English on your hands. The word order is different, the way you ask questions is different, everything is different. Tyler leaned forward, ready to absorb it all. Carolina walked him through the basics. Subject-object-verb instead of subject-verb-object. Facial expressions to indicate questions. Directional verbs. Classifiers. Tyler's head spun, but he kept pushing, kept practicing. You're doing really well, Carolina said after an hour. Most people don't pick up grammar this fast. I'm motivated. Plus, I'm used to learning new systems. That's what I do at work all day. This is just another system to master. It's more than a system though. It's a language. A living, breathing language with culture and history behind it. Teach me about that too. I want to understand all of it. Carolina smiled and pulled up a video on her laptop. For the next hour, they watched documentaries about deaf history, deaf culture, deaf pride. Tyler learned about the oralism movement that tried to erase sign language. About deaf schools being forced to ban signing. About deaf people fighting for the right to use their own language. I had no idea, Tyler said, stunned. I didn't know any of this history. Most hearing people don't. That's why it's important to learn. Ruby is part of this culture. This history is her history. Tyler thought about that. About Ruby growing up connected to this rich, complex culture. About her having pride in being deaf instead of shame. I want her to have all of this, he said. I want her to know her history, to be part of this community. I want her to be proud of who she is. Then you're on the right track. Carolina closed her laptop. Keep showing up. Keep learning. Take her to deaf events. Let her see deaf adults living full, successful lives. That's how she'll build her identity. They talked for a while longer about Ruby, about Bria, about their lives. Tyler learned that Carolina had grown up in Georgia, moved to Seattle for college and stayed for the deaf community here. She loved teaching, loved seeing kids discover their language and their culture. What about you? Carolina asked. What made you start your company? Tyler told her about his background. About growing up working class, putting himself through college, starting his business in his garage. About the long hours, the near bankruptcy, the moment it all finally clicked and the company took off. I thought success meant providing for Ruby, he said. I thought if I made enough money, gave her a nice home, sent her to good schools, that would be enough. But I was wrong. She needed me, not my money. It's not too late to give her both. I know. I'm trying. At 9, Carolina stood to leave. Tyler walked her to the door, Ruby and Bria trailing behind, making plans for their next playdate. Same time Monday? Carolina asked. Actually, Tyler said, feeling bold, would you and Bria want to come to dinner this weekend? Not a lesson, just dinner. As friends. Ruby would love it, and honestly so would I. Carolina hesitated and Tyler's heart sank. He'd overstepped. But then she smiled. Okay. Saturday night? I'll bring dessert. Perfect. After they left, Ruby signed to Tyler, asking if Bria could come over more often. Tyler signed back yes, as often as Carolina agreed to. Ruby hugged him tight and Tyler felt something shift in his chest. Hope. Real, tangible hope that they were going to be okay. Saturday arrived rainy and cold. Tyler spent the afternoon cooking, something he hadn't done in years. He made lasagna, garlic bread, salad. He cleaned the apartment, lit candles, put on soft music. Then he stopped himself. This wasn't a date. Carolina was his teacher, Ruby's friend's mother. Nothing more. But when Carolina arrived in a deep blue dress, her hair loose and curly, Tyler's breath caught. She looked beautiful. More than beautiful. Radiant. You look nice, he said, then immediately felt stupid. I mean, you always look nice. I just met. Carolina laughed. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. Tyler looked down at his maroon sweater and dark jeans. He'd changed 3 times before settling on this outfit. Dinner was easy. Comfortable. The girls entertained themselves and Tyler and Carolina talked about everything and nothing. Movies they'd seen, books they'd read, places they wanted to travel. It felt normal. Natural. Like they'd been friends for years instead of weeks. After dessert, a chocolate cake Carolina had made that melted in Tyler's mouth, they moved to the living room. The girls played on the floor while Tyler and Carolina sat on the couch, a respectable distance apart. This was nice, Carolina said. I don't get many adult conversations these days. It's usually just me and Bria. No other family here? No. My parents are in Georgia and we don't talk much. They never accepted Bria. Said I was making a mistake raising her in the deaf community, that I should focus on making her normal. She said the last word with distaste. We had a falling out about 3 years ago. I'm sorry. That's their loss. It is. Bria is perfect. They're missing out on knowing her. Tyler watched Carolina's face, saw the pain there, the old hurt. He wanted to reach out to comfort her, but didn't know if that would be appropriate. You're an amazing mother, he said instead. Bria is lucky to have you. Carolina's eyes glistened. Thank you. That means a lot. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the girls play. Ruby showed Bria her collection of art supplies, and they started drawing together, both signing about their creations. Ruby's changed so much in just a few weeks, Tyler said. She's more confident, more open. I have you to thank for that. You did the work. I just guided you. Still, I don't know what we would have done if I hadn't met you that day at the airport. I was drowning and I didn't even know it. You threw me a lifeline. Carolina turned to look at him, her expression serious. Tyler, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you really wait so long to learn ASL? I know you said work was busy, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I was scared. Scared that if I learned ASL, it would make Ruby's deafness real. Permanent. Like I was giving up on her ever being normal. He winced at the word. I know how that sounds. I know how wrong that is. But that's the truth. I thought if I just waited, maybe there would be some medical breakthrough, some way to fix her. And learning ASL felt like accepting that she'd never be fixed. Carolina nodded slowly. That's more honest than most parents are willing to be. But here's what you need to understand. Ruby doesn't need to be fixed. She's not broken. Her brain is wired for visual language. That's not a deficit. That's just different. I know that now. I wish I'd known it 3 years ago. You know it now. That's what matters. The evening ended with Carolina and Bria leaving around 9. At the door, Carolina turned to Tyler. Thank you for tonight. It was really nice. We should do it again. Next weekend? I'd like that. After they left, Tyler put Ruby to bed. She signed that she'd had fun, that she loved Bria and Carolina. Tyler signed back that he did too. In his own bed later, Tyler stared at the ceiling, thinking about Carolina. About the way she laughed, the way she moved her hands when she signed, the way she looked at him like he wasn't a failure but a work in progress. He was in dangerous territory, he knew. Developing feelings for someone who was supposed to be just a teacher, just a friend. But as he drifted off to sleep, Tyler couldn't bring himself to care. For the first time in 3 years he felt alive. Connected. Hopeful. And maybe, just maybe, happy. The weeks turned into a routine. Lessons 3 times a week, dinners on weekends, Thursday classes at Carolina's school. Tyler's ASL improved rapidly, his hands moving with increasing confidence. He could have full conversations with Ruby now, asking about her day, her feelings, her dreams. He learned she wanted to be an artist when she grew up. That her favorite color was purple. That she was scared of thunderstorms but loved the rain. All things he should have known years ago but was grateful to know now. At work, Tyler started making changes. He hired a deaf consultant to make sure the office was accessible. He added video captions to all company meetings. He even started learning how to conduct business in ASL, practicing with Carolina during their evening sessions. Nathan noticed the transformation. You're different, Nathan said one afternoon in Tyler's office. Lighter somehow. Like you've been carrying a weight and finally put it down. I feel different. Better. Like I'm finally doing what I should have been doing all along. It's more than that though, isn't it? It's Carolina. Tyler looked up sharply. What about her? Nathan smirked. Come on, man. You're not that subtle. You light up every time her name comes up. You check your phone every 5 minutes waiting for her texts. You're falling for her. She's Ruby's teacher. I can't complicate that. Why not? Ruby adores her. Bria and Ruby are basically sisters at this point. And from what you've told me, Carolina seems to like you too. I don't know. Feels too soon. Too complicated. Life is complicated. Doesn't mean you shouldn't take a chance. Tyler thought about Nathan's words for days. It was true that his feelings for Carolina had grown beyond friendship. He looked forward to seeing her, not just for the lessons but for her. Her laugh, her stories, her kindness. The way she treated Ruby like she was precious. The way she'd taken Tyler's failures and turned them into opportunities for growth. But what if he was misreading things? What if Carolina just saw him as a project, a hearing parent she was helping out of professional duty? The answer came on a Tuesday evening. Tyler and Ruby had attended Carolina's class, and afterwards, everyone went out for ice cream. The deaf community social had become Tyler's favorite night of the week. He'd made friends with other parents, practiced his signing, watched Ruby thrive. At the ice cream shop, Tyler and Carolina ended up sitting together while the kids played in the nearby playground visible through the window. They talked easily about work, about the girls, about nothing important. You've come so far, Carolina said, watching Tyler sign with another parent across the table. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You would have found another teacher, another way. You were ready to change. I just happened to be there at the right time. No, Tyler said firmly. It was you. You made me believe I could do this. You made me believe Ruby and I could have a real relationship. That's all you. Carolina looked at him, her eyes soft in the bright shop lighting. Tyler. I'm sorry. I know you're just trying to help. I don't want to make things weird. I need you to know how much you mean to me. To us. You're not making things weird. Carolina's voice was quiet. I need you to know something too. When I met you at that airport, I almost didn't offer to help. I was tired, I had my own problems, and I didn't want to take on someone else's issues. But there was something about the way you looked at Ruby. Such love and such pain. I couldn't walk away from that. I'm glad you didn't. Me too. Because somewhere along the way this stopped being just about teaching you ASL. You've become important to me, Tyler. You and Ruby both. Tyler's heart hammered in his chest. Carolina, His phone rang, shattering the moment. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. Tyler's stomach dropped. I should take this. Excuse me. He stepped outside, answering the call. Patricia. Tyler. We need to talk about Ruby. What about her? I heard you've been taking her to some deaf school. Surrounding her with other deaf people. That's not what's best for her. How did you even? Never mind. Yes, I'm taking her to community events. It's good for her. She's happier than she's been in years. She needs to learn to function in the hearing world, not hide in some deaf bubble. I'm concerned about the choices you're making. Tyler's grip on the phone tightened. You left her. You walked away because you couldn't handle having a deaf daughter. You don't get to have opinions about how I raise her now. I'm still her mother. And if I think you're not acting in her best interests, I have the right to petition for custody. The words hit Tyler like a punch to the gut. You can't be serious. I am. I've been thinking about this for a while. Maybe Ruby would be better off with me. I've learned some things about the latest hearing technology. Cochlear implants have come a long way. She could be normal, Tyler. But you're keeping her from that. She is normal. She doesn't need to be fixed. We'll see what a judge thinks. Expect papers from my lawyer. Patricia hung up. Tyler stood frozen on the sidewalk, the phone still pressed to his ear. This couldn't be happening. Patricia couldn't take Ruby. Not now. Not when things were finally getting better. Carolina appeared at his side. Tyler? What's wrong? He told her everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. Carolina's expression grew serious. She's threatening custody? Yes. She thinks I'm making Ruby worse by taking her to deaf events. She wants her to get cochlear implants to be normal. Implants aren't bad if the family and child want them. But forcing them? That's different. Ruby should get to choose when she's older. Carolina took Tyler's hand. You need a lawyer. A good one who understands deaf rights. I don't even know where to start. I do. There's a lawyer in the deaf community, Brian Park. He specializes in these cases. I'll get you his number. Thank you. God, what would I do without you? You're not without me. We're going to fight this together. Inside the shop, Ruby and Bria pressed their faces against the window, waving at them. They looked so happy, so carefree. Tyler's chest tightened. He couldn't lose her. He wouldn't. I need to tell Ruby, he said. She deserves to know what's happening. Wait until you talk to the lawyer. No point worrying her until you know what you're dealing with. Tyler nodded, trying to calm his racing heart. Carolina squeezed his hand, and he realized she hadn't let go. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. Thank you for being here. For helping me through this. Always. You're not alone in this, Tyler. Remember that. They went back inside and Tyler forced himself to smile for Ruby. But inside his mind was racing. Patricia wanted custody. After 3 years of not caring, she suddenly wanted Ruby back. And she was using Tyler's efforts to connect with his daughter against him. That night, after Ruby was in bed, Tyler called the lawyer Carolina had recommended. Brian Park answered on the second ring and listened to Tyler's story. Then he said something that made Tyler's blood run cold. Judges tend to favor mothers in custody cases, especially when the child is young and has special needs. If Patricia has a good lawyer, this could get ugly. But we have a strong defense. You've been Ruby's primary caregiver for 3 years. You're actively learning ASL and integrating Ruby into the deaf community. We can demonstrate that you're meeting her needs better than Patricia ever did. Will that be enough? I don't know. But we'll make it enough. Get me all the documentation you can. Records of Ruby's school attendance, medical appointments, everything. And I'll need character witnesses. People who can testify to the bond you have with Ruby. I can do that. Good. And Tyler? Don't do anything stupid. No confrontations with Patricia. No angry emails or texts. Everything you do from now on could be used in court. Tyler agreed and hung up. He sat in the dark living room, his head in his hands. He'd finally figured out how to be Ruby's father, and now Patricia wanted to take her away. His phone buzzed. A text from Carolina, "You okay? Bria and I are here if you need anything." Tyler typed back, "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out. We're in this together." Tyler stared at those words. Together. He'd been alone for so long, carrying everything by himself. But now he had Carolina. He had the deaf community. He had people who actually cared about Ruby's well-being. He wouldn't let Patricia win. Not when he'd finally learned how to be the father Ruby needed. Feeling the weight of Tyler's struggle? Wondering if he'll get to keep Ruby? If you're invested in this story, please subscribe and drop a comment. Let me know, what would you do if someone threatened to take away your child right when you finally learned how to connect with them? Your thoughts and support mean everything. The papers arrived on a Friday afternoon. Tyler was at work when a process server walked into his office and handed him a manila envelope. Nathan stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "What is it?" Nathan asked. Tyler opened the envelope with shaking hands. Custody petition. Patricia Morrison versus Tyler Brennan. The words swam before his eyes. "She's really doing this." Tyler's voice came out hollow. Nathan crossed the office and read over his shoulder. "This is garbage. It says you're creating an insular environment that limits Ruby's opportunities. That you're preventing her from accessing hearing technology that could improve her quality of life. It's all twisted. But a judge might believe it. Especially if Patricia gets a good expert witness. Then we get better expert witnesses. Carolina can testify, right? She's a professional, a teacher. She can explain why what you're doing is right for Ruby." Tyler nodded slowly. "I need to call Brian." The lawyer picked up immediately. "I got a copy of the petition. It's aggressive, but we expected that. Don't panic. We're going to build a strong case. I need you to compile a list of everyone who can testify on your behalf. Teachers, therapists, community members. Anyone who can speak to your relationship with Ruby and the progress you've made." Carolina Rivers. "She's been teaching me ASL, and she runs the deaf community programs Ruby attends." "Perfect. Get me her contact information. I'll reach out. We're also going to need Ruby's school records, her therapist's notes, everything that shows she's thriving under your care." Tyler spent the rest of the afternoon gathering documents. Ruby's report cards, which showed steady improvement. Notes from her teacher praising her social development. Records of the ASL classes Tyler had attended. Photos of Ruby at deaf community events, smiling and engaged. At 6, he picked up Ruby from school and drove home in silence. How was he supposed to tell her? How could he explain that her mother, who'd abandoned her 3 years ago, now wanted to take her away from everything she'd built? At home, Tyler made dinner on autopilot. Ruby watched him, her expression concerned. She signed, "Are you okay?" Tyler forced a smile and signed back, "Yes. Just thinking about work." But Ruby was smart. She knew something was wrong. After dinner, she climbed into his lap, something she rarely did anymore. She was getting so big, growing up so fast. Tyler held her close, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. His phone rang. "Carolina." "Hey," he said, stepping into the kitchen so Ruby wouldn't see his face. "Brian called me. I told him I'd testify. Whatever you need, Tyler." "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you for everything you're doing." "Stop trying to repay me. Just let me help. That's all I want." They talked for a few minutes more, Carolina offering reassurance and practical advice. When Tyler hung up, he felt marginally better. He had people on his side. He had evidence of Ruby's progress. He had proof that he was a good father. But would it be enough? Saturday morning, Tyler met with Brian at his office downtown. Carolina came with him, having offered to watch Ruby and Bria at her place. The lawyer's office was professional but warm, with pictures of his own deaf children on the desk. "Tell me everything," Brian said. "Start from when Ruby was diagnosed and don't leave anything out." Tyler talked for an hour. About Patricia's abandonment. About his own failures and his recent changes. About meeting Carolina and learning ASL and watching Ruby blossom. About the deaf community embracing them both. Brian took notes, occasionally asking questions. When Tyler finished, Brian leaned back in his chair. "Okay, here's what we're looking at. Patricia's argument is that you're limiting Ruby by focusing on deaf culture instead of integrating her into mainstream hearing society. She'll probably bring in audiologists and speech therapists who'll say cochlear implants and oral education are in Ruby's best interest. But Ruby doesn't want that. She's happy the way she is. I believe you. But we need to prove it. We need to show that Ruby is thriving, that your parenting choices are based on her needs and not your convenience. Carolina's testimony will be crucial. She's a professional in the field, and she can speak to both your progress and Ruby's development. What about Ruby? Will she have to testify? Possibly. At 6, it's not common, but the judge might want to talk to her in chambers. If that happens, Ruby will need to be able to communicate clearly what she wants. She can do that. Her ASL is fluent. Good. Then we'll request an ASL interpreter for any conversations with the judge. That's Ruby's right under ADA. They spent another hour strategizing. Brian would file a response to Patricia's petition, highlighting Tyler's involvement in Ruby's life and his recent efforts to learn ASL and connect Ruby with her community. They'd gather testimonials from teachers, therapists, and community members. They'd demonstrate that Ruby's current environment was stable, supportive, and exactly what she needed. When's the hearing? Tyler asked. 6 weeks. We have time to build the case, but not a lot. I'll need you to be available for meetings, to gather documents, to do whatever it takes. I will. Ruby is my priority. She always should have been. After the meeting, Tyler drove to Carolina's apartment to pick up Ruby. Carolina lived in a modest 2-bedroom in Redmond, close to her school. The apartment was cozy, filled with books and art supplies and signs everywhere labeling items in ASL. Ruby and Bria were in the living room, building a fort out of blankets. How did it go? Carolina asked, handing Tyler a cup of coffee. As well as could be expected. Brian thinks we have a good case, but nothing's guaranteed. We'll make sure it goes our way. I'm not letting Patricia take Ruby from you. Not after everything you've both been through to get here. Tyler looked at her, this woman who'd changed his life in a matter of weeks. Why are you doing all this? You could have just taught me some signs and walked away. Instead, you're here, fighting beside me, putting yourself in the middle of my mess. Carolina set down her coffee and looked him in the eye. Because I care about Ruby. And because I care about you. The words hung in the air between them. Tyler's heart pounded. Carolina, don't. Not now. Not with everything going on. But after this is over, after Ruby is safe, we'll talk. Okay. Tyler nodded, not trusting his voice. He wanted to pull her close, to kiss her, to tell her she'd become the most important person in his world besides Ruby. But she was right. This wasn't the time. First, he had to win this custody battle. Then he could think about the future. Ruby and Bria emerged from their fort, both signing rapidly about their afternoon. Ruby ran to Tyler and hugged him, and he lifted her up, holding her tight. She was his. No one was taking her away. He'd make sure of that. Over the next few weeks, Tyler threw himself into preparing for the hearing. He met with Brian multiple times, practiced his testimony, gathered evidence. Carolina helped him prepare to discuss Ruby's progress, to articulate why deaf culture mattered, to explain his journey from ignorance to understanding. The deaf community rallied around them. Parents Tyler had met at Thursday classes offered to testify. Terrell, the deaf teacher, agreed to speak about Ruby's development. Even Jennifer Park, Tyler's classmate, said she'd share her own story about raising a deaf child and the importance of sign language. Patricia remained silent through all of this. No phone calls, no attempts to see Ruby, nothing. Just the looming threat of the custody hearing, now 3 weeks away. Tyler tried to keep things normal for Ruby. They attended class on Thursdays. They practiced signing together every night. They went to deaf community events on weekends. But Tyler could see the stress affecting her. She was clingier, more anxious, asking him repeatedly if everything was okay. Finally, 2 weeks before the hearing, Tyler sat Ruby down and told her the truth. He signed slowly, carefully, explaining that her mom wanted her to come live with her, but that Tyler was fighting to keep her here. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. She signed, I don't want to leave you. I want to stay here with you and Carolina and Bria. Tyler's heart broke. I'm doing everything I can to make sure you stay. But you might have to talk to a judge and tell them what you want. I'll tell them. I'll tell them I want to stay with you. Tyler pulled her into his arms, holding her as she cried. He'd done this. His years of neglect had put them in this position. If he'd learned ASL from the beginning, if he'd been the father Ruby needed, Patricia wouldn't have ammunition to use against him. That night, after Ruby was asleep, Carolina came over. Tyler had called her in tears, and she dropped everything to be there. She held him on the couch while he fell apart, all the fear and guilt and anger pouring out. I caused this, he said into her shoulder. If I'd been better from the start, none of this would be happening. No. Patricia caused this. She abandoned her daughter and now wants her back for the wrong reasons. You're doing your best. That's all anyone can ask. What if it's not enough? What if I lose her? You won't. We won't let that happen. Carolina pulled back to look at him. Tyler, you're a good father. Ruby knows that. The judge will see it too. How can you be so sure? Because I see how you are with her. The way you practice signs until your hands hurt. The way you show up to every class, every event, no matter how tired you are. The way you've changed your entire life to meet her needs. That's love. Real love. And it shows. Tyler looked at Carolina, at her fierce expression, her unwavering support. He couldn't help himself. He leaned forward and kissed her. Carolina kissed him back, her hands coming up to his face. For a moment the world fell away. The custody battle, the fear, all of it disappeared. There was just this. Just them. When they pulled apart, Carolina was smiling. I thought we were waiting until after the hearing. We were. We are. I needed that. I needed it too. Carolina stood, pulling Tyler up with her. But now I should go. You need to sleep. Big day tomorrow with Brian. Tyler walked her to the door. Thank you. For everything. For being here. Always. Carolina kissed him once more, soft and sweet, then left. Tyler stood at the door for a long time after she was gone, his fingers touching his lips. He had so much to lose. But maybe, just maybe, he had so much to gain too. If he could just get through the next 2 weeks. The days before the hearing blurred together. Tyler met with Brian nearly every day, refining their strategy. They rehearsed questions Patricia's lawyer might ask. They practiced Tyler's responses. They went over the evidence again and again until Tyler could recite it in his sleep. Carolina spent hours helping Tyler prepare to explain Ruby's development. She coached him on how to discuss deaf culture, how to articulate the importance of sign language, how to counter arguments about cochlear implants without seeming anti-technology. The key, Carolina said one evening at Tyler's apartment, is to emphasize choice. Ruby should get to choose if she wants implants when she's older. But right now she's thriving with ASL. She's connected to a community. She's happy. That's what matters. Tyler nodded, taking notes. Ruby and Bria played nearby, occasionally joining the conversation when Carolina signed something to them. What if they ask about her hearing aids? Tyler asked. Ruby tried them when she was 4 and they didn't work well for her. Then you say that. You tried different options and Ruby preferred signing. That shows you're responsive to her needs, not ideological. The Thursday before the hearing, Tyler attended Carolina's class one last time before they'd face Patricia in court. The other parents had heard about the custody battle, and they rallied around him with stories of their own struggles, their own fights to do right by their deaf children. I almost lost my son, Jennifer Park said. My ex-husband tried the same thing. Said I was limiting Tommy by focusing on ASL instead of speech therapy. But the judge saw that Tommy was happy, healthy, and thriving. That's what mattered. The same will be true for you and Ruby. Terrell approached Tyler after class. He signed, with Carolina interpreting, Ruby is one of the brightest kids in our community. She's going to do great things. Don't let anyone make you doubt that you're giving her the tools to succeed. Tyler thanked him, feeling the support of these people who'd become like family. They barely knew him, but they'd taken him in because he was trying, because he cared about Ruby, because he'd shown up when it counted. On Saturday, 3 days before the hearing, Carolina took Tyler and Ruby to a deaf culture festival. The event was held at a community center with performances, art exhibits, and workshops. Ruby ran around with Bria and other deaf children, completely at ease. Tyler watched her perform a signed song with a group of kids, her face glowing with joy. This is what Patricia wants to take away from her, Carolina said, standing beside Tyler. This sense of belonging. This community that accepts her exactly as she is. I won't let her, Tyler said firmly. That night Tyler couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through testimony in his head. What if he froze on the stand? What if he said the wrong thing? What if the judge sided with Patricia despite everything? At 2 a.m. his phone buzzed. A text from Carolina. Can't sleep either. Want to talk? Tyler called her immediately. They talked for over an hour about everything and nothing. About Ruby and Bria. About their fears and hopes. About what they'd do when this was all over. I want to take Ruby to Disneyland, Tyler said. She's never been and I think she'd love it. There are lots of deaf accessible services there now. Bria would love that too. Maybe we could all go together. Make it a family trip. Family. The word settled over Tyler like a warm blanket. That's what they'd become, the four of them. A family. Not in the traditional sense but in the way that mattered. People who cared about each other, who supported each other, who showed up when it counted. I'd like that, Tyler said. After the hearing, let's plan it. It's a date. They hung up and Tyler finally slept. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Tyler dressed in his best suit, a charcoal gray that he'd had tailored for business meetings. He helped Ruby into a bright red dress she'd picked out herself. She was nervous, he could tell, but she held her head high as they drove to the courthouse. Brian met them in the lobby along with Carolina, who'd taken the day off work. She wore a professional green suit, her hair pulled back. She looked beautiful and confident, and Tyler drew strength from her presence. Ready? Brian asked. As I'll ever be. They entered the courtroom. Patricia was already there, sitting at the defendant's table with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in a navy blue suit. Patricia wore a cream-colored dress and had her blonde hair styled perfectly. She looked like the picture of maternal concern. Tyler's stomach churned. Ruby clutched his hand as they sat down. Carolina sat in the gallery behind them, giving Tyler an encouraging nod. The judge entered, an older woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Judge Helen Martinez. Brian had said she was fair, that she listened to evidence rather than making assumptions. Tyler hoped that was true. Patricia's lawyer went first, laying out her case. Patricia had been overwhelmed when Ruby was diagnosed, but she'd since done extensive research. She believed Ruby needed cochlear implants and oral education to succeed in the hearing world. Tyler was preventing Ruby from accessing these opportunities by focusing exclusively on deaf culture. He was creating an insular environment that would limit Ruby's future options. Tyler listened to the lies and distortions, his jaw clenched. They made it sound like he was hurting Ruby by learning her language, like connecting her to the deaf community was some kind of abuse. Then it was Brian's turn. He presented the evidence of Tyler's involvement in Ruby's life. The school records showing Ruby's academic improvement. The therapist's notes documenting her increased confidence and happiness. Photos of Ruby at deaf events, engaged and thriving. Mr. Brennan has done exactly what any good parent would do, Brian argued. He educated himself about his daughter's needs and met her where she was. Ruby is fluent in American Sign Language, she's part of a vibrant community, and she's thriving under her father's care. Ms. Morrison abandoned Ruby 3 years ago and now wants to disrupt her life based on a misguided belief that being deaf is something that needs to be fixed. Patricia's lawyer objected, but the judge waved her off. I'll hear testimony. Ms. Morrison, you're first. Patricia took the stand. She talked about how she'd left because she was overwhelmed, how she'd spent the past 3 years researching deaf education, how she now believed Ruby needed a different approach. She cried at the right moments, said all the right things. Tyler wanted to scream. When Brian cross-examined her, he was gentle but firm. Ms. Morrison, how many signs do you know in American Sign Language? I'm learning. I have apps on my phone. So none. How many times have you visited Ruby in the past 3 years? I sent birthday cards. Presents at Christmas. That's not what I asked. How many visits? Patricia's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled her. Answer the question, Ms. Morrison. None. But I was giving Tyler space. I thought that's what he wanted. Or you couldn't be bothered to maintain a relationship with your daughter because she's deaf. Objection. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Park. Brian nodded. Ms. Morrison, if Ruby came to live with you, would you learn ASL? I'd make sure she had access to good speech therapists. That's more important. So no, you wouldn't learn your daughter's language. No further questions. Patricia stepped down, her composure shaken. Tyler felt a flicker of hope. Then Carolina took the stand. She was sworn in and Brian began his questions. Carolina talked about her work at the Washington School for the Deaf, about her experience as both a deaf adult and a mother of a deaf child. She explained how she'd met Tyler and Ruby, how she'd watched Tyler transform from a father who could barely communicate with his daughter to one who was fluent enough to have real conversations. Ruby has blossomed in the past few months, Carolina testified. She's more confident, more engaged, happier. That's directly related to her father's efforts to learn ASL and connect her with the deaf community. Taking her away from that environment would be devastating. Patricia's lawyer cross-examined her. Ms. Rivers, isn't it true that you have a personal relationship with Mr. Brennan? That you're romantically involved? Carolina didn't flinch. We care about each other, yes. But that doesn't change the facts of Ruby's development or Tyler's dedication as a father. Isn't it possible you're biased in his favor? I'm biased in Ruby's favor. And Ruby is thriving with her father. That's not opinion. That's documented fact. The lawyer tried a few more angles, but Carolina remained calm and credible. When she stepped down, Tyler caught her eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Then it was Tyler's turn. He took the stand, his hands shaking. Brian asked him about the past 3 years, about his failures and his recent changes. Tyler answered honestly, not sugarcoating anything. "I was a terrible father for a long time," he admitted. "I couldn't communicate with Ruby beyond basic needs. I told myself I was too busy, that work came first. But the truth is I was scared. Scared of Ruby's deafness, scared of failing her, scared of admitting I didn't know what to do. Meeting Carolina forced me to confront all of that. And once I started learning ASL, everything changed. Ruby changed. Our relationship changed. I finally became the father she deserved. And if you retain custody, what are your plans for Ruby's future? Continue her education at the Washington School for the Deaf. Keep her involved in the deaf community. Support whatever choices she makes about her own body and her own communication methods when she's old enough to make them. Love her unconditionally." Patricia's lawyer tried to rattle him during cross-examination. She asked about his work schedule, about nannies and childcare, about why he'd waited so long to learn ASL. Tyler answered each question calmly, acknowledging his mistakes but emphasizing his commitment to doing better. "Mr. Brennan, don't you think Ruby deserves the opportunity to hear? To access sound through cochlear implants? Ruby deserves to make that choice herself when she's older. Right now, she's happy and healthy exactly as she is. I won't force a surgery on her based on what I think she should be." "So you're admitting you're limiting her options?" "No. I'm saying her options will always be there. But she should get to choose, not have it chosen for her by adults who think being deaf is a problem that needs solving." When Tyler stepped down, he felt drained but relieved. He'd told the truth. That had to count for something. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Carolina hugged Tyler. "You did great. Really great. We'll see. It's up to the judge now." They returned to the courtroom for the final phase. The judge wanted to speak with Ruby in chambers, with an ASL interpreter present. Tyler's heart raced as Ruby stood and followed the bailiff out of the room. She looked so small, so vulnerable. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Tyler couldn't sit still. He paced the hallway, Carolina beside him, both of them silent with worry. Finally, Ruby emerged. She ran to Tyler and hugged him tight. The judge returned to the bench. "I've made my decision," Judge Martinez said. "I'll issue a written ruling, but I want to state the key points now. After hearing all testimony and speaking with Ruby, it's clear that she is thriving in her father's care. Mr. Brennan has demonstrated a genuine commitment to meeting Ruby's needs, including learning her language and connecting her with her community. While Ms. Morrison's concerns about Ruby's future are understandable, they appear to be based on outdated assumptions about deaf people's capabilities rather than Ruby's actual well-being." Tyler's heart pounded. Was this good? Was the judge ruling in his favor? "Therefore, I'm denying Ms. Morrison's petition for custody. Mr. Brennan will retain primary custody of Ruby. However, I'm also ordering that Ms. Morrison be given supervised visitation rights, contingent on her completing an ASL course and demonstrating ability to communicate with Ruby. Ruby deserves to have a relationship with both parents, but that relationship must be built on respect for who she is, not attempts to change her." Tyler couldn't breathe. They'd won. Ruby was staying with him. Carolina was crying. Ruby was signing, "We won? I stay with you." Tyler signed back. "Yes, yes, you stay with me." Ruby threw her arms around him and he held her tight, tears streaming down his face. Patricia stood, her face pale, and left the courtroom without a word. Tyler felt a flash of pity for her, but it was quickly overwhelmed by relief. It was over. Ruby was safe. Outside the courthouse, Tyler, Ruby, Carolina, and Bria stood together. Brian shook Tyler's hand and congratulated him, then excused himself to file the official paperwork. "We did it," Tyler said, still not quite believing it. "You did it," Carolina corrected. "You became the father Ruby needed. That's what made the difference." Tyler looked at Ruby, at Carolina, at Bria. His family. Not the one he'd planned on, but the one that had found him at exactly the right moment. "Thank you," he said to Carolina. "For everything. I literally couldn't have done this without you." "I know." Carolina smiled. "Lucky for you, I'm not going anywhere." They went out for celebratory ice cream, all four of them. Ruby and Bria signed excitedly about the hearing, about what Ruby had told the judge, about how glad they were it was over. Tyler sat with Carolina, their hands intertwined under the table, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real, lasting peace. The drive home from the courthouse was quiet, but it was a good quiet. Ruby sat in the back seat, signing to herself, a smile on her face. Tyler kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, still not quite believing they'd won. At home, Tyler ordered pizza and they had a small celebration. Carolina and Bria stayed for dinner, all of them laughing and talking, the tension of the past weeks finally releasing. Ruby showed Bria her favorite movie, and the two girls curled up on the couch, eyes glued to the screen. Tyler and Carolina cleaned up the kitchen together, moving around each other with easy familiarity. This felt right. Natural. Like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. What happens now? Carolina asked, drying the last plate. Now I keep doing what I've been doing. Being Ruby's dad. Learning. Growing. Showing up. Tyler paused. And I was hoping you'd keep being part of that. Not just as Ruby's teacher but as more. Carolina set down the dish towel and turned to face him. Tyler Brennan, are you asking me out on a real date? Yes, I am. If you'll say yes. I will. But only if you promise this isn't just about gratitude. I didn't help you so you'd feel obligated to date me. It's not obligation. I don't know how to explain it. You've changed my life, Carolina. You've changed Ruby's life. But more than that, you've become someone I can't imagine not having around. Someone I think about constantly. Someone who makes me want to be better. Carolina smiled. That's a pretty good explanation. Yes, Tyler. I'll go on a date with you. They kissed, soft and slow, the sound of the movie playing in the background, Ruby and Bria giggling at something on screen. This was Tyler's life now. Complex, messy, full of people who'd chosen to love each other despite the chaos. The next few weeks were easier. Patricia called once, asking to schedule her first supervised visit with Ruby. Tyler agreed, and they set up times for Patricia to see Ruby at a neutral location with a social worker present. It was awkward, but it was a start. Maybe Patricia would learn. Maybe she'd become part of Ruby's life in a healthy way. Only time would tell. Tyler's relationship with Carolina deepened. They went on proper dates, dinners without the kids, walks around the city, movie nights. They talked about their pasts, their hopes for the future, their fears and dreams. Tyler learned about Carolina's childhood, about growing up between two worlds, hearing and deaf, never quite fitting in either. About the teacher who'd finally taught her to be proud of her deaf identity. About meeting Bria's father and believing he'd accept them both, only to be abandoned. I told myself I'd never let anyone in again, Carolina admitted one night as they sat on Tyler's balcony, looking out at the Seattle skyline. I'd focus on Bria, on my work, and that would be enough. But then I met you. This stubborn, clueless hearing guy who was trying so hard but had no idea what he was doing. And something in me softened. I thought maybe it was worth the risk. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you took a chance on me. Me too. At work, Tyler made more changes. He started a diversity and inclusion initiative, focusing on disability access. He hired 2 deaf employees for his tech team and made sure the office was fully accessible. Nathan teased him about becoming an activist, but Tyler didn't care. He'd learned something crucial these past months: access mattered. Belonging mattered. Creating spaces where everyone could participate fully, that mattered. Ruby continued to thrive. Her grades improved. Her confidence soared. She made more friends at deaf community events and started talking about becoming an artist when she grew up. Tyler enrolled her in an art class for deaf children, and she brought home painting after painting, each one proudly displayed on the refrigerator. One evening, about 6 weeks after the hearing, Ruby asked Tyler a question that stopped him in his tracks. Is Carolina going to be my new mom? Tyler sat down on Ruby's bed, thinking carefully about his answer. I don't know, honey. Carolina and I care about each other and we're spending a lot of time together. But that's a decision we'd all make together. How would you feel about that? Ruby's face lit up. I'd love it. Then Bria would really be my sister. Let's take things slow, okay? But I'm glad you like Carolina. She cares about you a lot. I know. She tells me in sign language. Not like. Ruby paused, and Tyler knew she was thinking about Patricia. About a mother who'd never learned to say, I love you, in a way Ruby could understand. Your mom is trying, Tyler said gently. She's learning ASL now. It might take time, but maybe you two can build something good together. Ruby nodded, but Tyler could see the doubt in her eyes. Patricia had hurt her deeply by leaving. It would take more than a few supervised visits to repair that damage. 2 months after the hearing, Tyler took Ruby, Carolina, and Bria to Disneyland, just like he'd promised. They spent 4 days riding rides, meeting characters, watching shows. Ruby's face glowed with joy the entire time, especially when they encountered cast members who could sign with her. Carolina translated when needed, but often Ruby could communicate on her own, confident in her language and her identity. On the last night they watched the fireworks from Main Street. Ruby sat on Tyler's shoulders, Bria on Carolina's. The sky exploded with color, and Tyler felt Carolina's hand slip into his. They'd come so far from that day at the airport when Carolina had knelt down and signed to a lonely little girl. "Thank you," Tyler said, "not for the first time and not for the last." "For what?" "For saving us. For seeing what we could be and helping us get there." Carolina squeezed his hand. "You saved yourselves. I just pointed the way." That night, after the girls were asleep in their hotel room, Tyler and Carolina sat on the balcony, looking out at the park. The lights of the castle glowed in the distance, and Tyler thought about everything that had changed. "I want to ask you something," Tyler said. "And you can say no, it won't change anything between us. But I need to say it. Okay? Move in with me. You and Bria. Not because it makes sense logistically, though it does. But because I love you. Because Bria and Ruby are already sisters in every way that matters. Because I want to wake up every morning with you there. Because I want to build a life with you." Carolina was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes. Yes. Yes. On one condition." "Anything." "You keep learning. Keep growing. Keep being the man who admits when he's wrong and does the work to fix it. That's who I fell in love with. The Tyler who showed up even when it was hard. I promise. Every day I'll keep showing up." They kissed and Tyler felt his world expand. It wasn't the life he'd planned. It was messier, more complicated, required more of him than he'd ever thought possible. But it was better. So much better. The move happened gradually. First, a few of Bria's things appeared at Tyler's apartment. Then some of Carolina's clothes in his closet. Then boxes and furniture, and suddenly Tyler's bachelor pad was a home. A real home with kids' artwork on the walls and toys on the floor and laughter echoing through the rooms. Ruby and Bria shared a room by choice, bunk beds and a divider for when they wanted privacy. They stayed up late signing to each other, giggling about 7-year-old things, being sisters in every way that mattered. Tyler's relationship with Patricia remained cordial but distant. She completed the ASL course the judge had ordered and started having unsupervised visits with Ruby once a month. The visits were awkward, both of them trying too hard, but they were getting better. Patricia would never be Mother of the Year, but she was trying. That was something. Nathan became a regular fixture at family dinners, joining them most Sundays. He taught Bria and Ruby card tricks and made Carolina laugh with stories about Tyler's early business days. Tyler watched his best friend integrate into his new family and felt grateful for all of it. At work, Tyler's diversity initiative flourished. The company won an award for accessibility, and Tyler gave interviews about the importance of hiring deaf employees and creating inclusive workplaces. He talked about Ruby, about what he'd learned, about how much richer his life had become since embracing deaf culture. 6 months after Carolina and Bria moved in, Tyler started planning. He wanted to propose, but he wanted to do it right. Not just right for Carolina, but right for Ruby and Bria too. This wasn't just about two adults falling in love. It was about creating a family, all 4 of them together. He talked to Ruby first, signing carefully in her room one night after tucking her in. "I want to ask Carolina to marry me. But I want to make sure you're okay with that first. This is your home too, your family too. You get a say." Ruby's face broke into the biggest smile Tyler had ever seen. "Yes, ask her. We can all be a family for real. We're already a family for real. But yes, this would make it official." Then Tyler talked to Bria with Carolina's permission. The little girl was just as enthusiastic, signing rapidly about being real sisters with Ruby and having Tyler as her dad for real. The plan came together over several weeks. Tyler would propose at the annual Deaf Community Celebration, surrounded by the people who'd supported them through everything. He'd sign his proposal, making sure everyone could understand, making it part of their community and their culture. He worked with Terrell to plan it, practicing his signs until they were perfect. He bought a ring, a simple band with a small diamond, elegant but not flashy. He told Nathan and swore him to secrecy, though Nathan immediately guessed and gave Tyler grief for thinking he could keep a secret. The night of the celebration arrived. The community center was packed with people, music pounding through the floor since most communication was visual. Tyler was nervous, his hands sweating, his heart racing. Carolina looked beautiful in a royal blue dress, her hair loose, her smile bright as she chatted with friends. Ruby and Bria ran around with other kids, their hands flying in animated conversation. This was Tyler's world now. These were his people. At 8 o'clock, Taro got everyone's attention. The music stopped and people gathered in a circle. Tyler stood in the center, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could see it. Carolina looked confused as he pulled her into the center with him. Ruby and Bria joined them, both girls grinning like they knew exactly what was happening. Tyler took a deep breath and began to sign. 2 years ago I was lost. I had a daughter I couldn't talk to, a life that looked successful but felt empty, and no idea how to fix any of it. Then I met you. You changed everything. You taught me a language, but more than that, you taught me how to be a father. How to be a partner. How to be part of a community. You took a broken man and helped him become whole. Carolina's eyes glistened with tears. The crowd around them was silent, watching. Tyler continued signing, his hands steady now. I love you. I love Bria. I love the family we've built together. And I want to make it official. I want to be your husband, Bria's father, Ruby's dad for the rest of my life. Carolina Rivers, will you marry me? He pulled out the ring. Ruby and Bria signed say yes, making everyone laugh. Carolina was crying now, but she was also smiling. She signed back, yes. Yes, of course yes. The crowd erupted in applause and stomping feet, the vibrations traveling through the floor. Tyler slipped the ring onto Carolina's finger and kissed her while Ruby and Bria hugged them both. Around them, their community celebrated, these people who'd taken Tyler in despite his mistakes, who'd taught him that family was built on love and effort and showing up every single day. Later, as the party continued, Tyler found himself standing with Carolina, watching Ruby and Bria dance with other deaf children. The girls were laughing, completely at ease, completely themselves. Thank you, Tyler said, signing and speaking simultaneously. It had become habit now, making sure communication was accessible to everyone. You keep saying that, Carolina signed back with a smile. You know you don't have to thank me anymore, right? I'll never stop thanking you. You gave me back my daughter. You gave me a family. You gave me a life I didn't know I could have. We gave each other that. That's what love is, Tyler. Mutual transformation. Tyler pulled her close, and they swayed to music he couldn't hear but could feel through the floor. His life had become something he'd never planned for, never imagined. But it was better than anything he could have dreamed up on his own. Ruby ran over, pulling them onto the dance floor. Bria joined, and the four of them danced together, hands flying in sign language, laughter bubbling up, a family in every way that mattered. Tyler had spent 3 years in silence, drowning in his inability to connect with Ruby. Now his world was full of noise and light and communication and love. All because he'd finally learned to listen with his eyes and speak with his hands. All because Carolina had kneeled down at gate 23 and offered to help a stranger who needed it desperately. All because he'd finally learned what it meant to be a father. The wedding took place 6 months later in the same community center where Tyler had proposed. It was a deaf-hearing bilingual ceremony, with both an officiant who signed and one who spoke, making sure everyone could participate fully. Ruby and Bria were flower girls, wearing matching bright red dresses they'd picked out themselves. They took their job very seriously, scattering petals with solemn concentration before breaking into giggles halfway down the aisle. Patricia came to the wedding, sitting in the back with her new partner, a deaf man named James who'd been helping her improve her ASL. It was awkward, but it was progress. Ruby had signed to Tyler that morning that she was glad her mom was there, glad that Patricia was trying. That was enough. Nathan was Tyler's best man, giving a speech in both ASL and English about watching his best friend transform from a workaholic who couldn't communicate with his daughter to a devoted father and partner who'd embraced an entire culture. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Carolina was stunning in a green dress that made her skin glow. She'd chosen green because Ruby had told her once that it was the color of growth, of new things growing. Tyler wore a suit the same color, and when he signed his vows to her, his hands didn't shake at all. I promise to keep learning, keep growing, keep showing up. I promise to honor your language and your culture. I promise to be the father Bria deserves and the husband you deserve. I promise to love you and our girls with everything I have, every single day for the rest of my life. Carolina signed her vows back through tears. I promise to be patient when you mess up your signs. I promise to love you through the hard days and the easy ones. I promise to build this family with you, to raise these girls together, to make a home where everyone belongs. I promise to love you exactly as you are, while helping you become who you want to be. They kissed to thunderous applause and stomping feet, and Tyler thought his heart might burst from happiness. The reception was a mix of deaf and hearing traditions. Music played for the hearing guests, but the DJ also used lights and visual effects so the deaf guests could enjoy the show. There were speeches and signers, dancing and storytelling, food and laughter and joy. Ruby and Bria performed a signed poem they'd written together about what family meant. Tyler watched them, these two beautiful girls who'd become sisters, and felt overwhelming gratitude. He'd almost missed this. If Carolina hadn't approached him that day at the airport, if he'd turned down her offer to help, none of this would exist. Late in the evening, Tyler found himself at a table with Carolina, watching their girls dance with other children. The community center was full of people they loved, people who'd supported them through the custody battle and the engagement and now this celebration. "Did you ever imagine this?" Carolina asked, signing as she spoke. "That day at the airport, did you think we'd end up here?" "No. I didn't think past the next few hours. I was just trying to survive." Tyler took her hand. "But I'm glad we did end up here. I'm glad you took a chance on a clueless hearing guy who didn't know what he was doing. You're not clueless anymore. You're one of the best signers in your ASL class. Terrell says you're ready to start interpreting training if you want." Tyler laughed. "I don't know about that. But I do know I want to keep learning. For Ruby. For Bria. For our community." "Our community," Carolina repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." They were interrupted by Ruby and Bria running over, both signing rapidly about something that had happened on the dance floor. Tyler caught about 70% of it, enough to laugh and respond appropriately. The girls ran off again and Tyler shook his head in wonder. 2 years ago I couldn't understand a single sign. Now I'm having full conversations with my kid. It still amazes me sometimes. That's what happens when you put in the work. You changed your whole life, Tyler. Not everyone would do that. Not everyone has Ruby. Not everyone has you pushing them to be better. A slow song started and Tyler led Carolina onto the dance floor. They swayed together, surrounded by friends and family, both deaf and hearing, all celebrating this new beginning. "I have something to tell you," Carolina said, her hands moving in sign language against Tyler's shoulder where she'd placed them. "What?" "I'm pregnant." Tyler stopped dancing. "What?" Carolina laughed. "I found out yesterday. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you, but I can't keep secrets." "We're having a baby?" "We're having a baby." Tyler picked her up and spun her around, not caring who saw. Another child. Another person to love, to raise, to teach. Whether the baby was deaf or hearing didn't matter. They'd figure it out together. They'd make sure the child grew up bilingual, connected to both worlds, proud of their family. Ruby and Bria ran over, asking what was happening. Carolina signed to them about the baby, and both girls started screaming and jumping up and down. A real sister or brother this time, not just in their hearts but by blood too. The four of them hugged, and then it was five, Tyler's hand resting gently on Carolina's still flat stomach. The night ended with Tyler and Carolina leaving in a shower of rice and cheers, headed to their honeymoon in Hawaii. Ruby and Bria would stay with Nathan, who'd agreed to learn basic ASL specifically so he could watch the girls. Everyone had embraced this new life, this new family, this new way of being. On the plane, Tyler thought about that day at Gate 23. About sitting next to Ruby, unable to communicate, drowning in his own failure. About Carolina kneeling down and changing everything with a simple offer to help. About how far they'd all come since then. He thought about the future. About raising 3 children who would grow up understanding that difference wasn't deficit, that deaf culture was something to celebrate, that family came in all forms. About growing old with Carolina, learning and loving and building a life together. His phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Girls are fine. Signed good night," to them. "Pretty sure I did it wrong but they smiled anyway. Have a great honeymoon, you lucky bastard." Tyler smiled and showed Carolina the text. She laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. Below them, Seattle disappeared into clouds, and ahead of them stretched endless possibilities. Tyler had spent 3 years in silence, separated from his daughter by his own fear and ignorance. Now his world was full of conversation and connection and love. All because he'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. True communication required meeting people where they were, speaking their language, making the effort even when it was hard. He'd learned to listen with his eyes and speak with his hands. And in doing so, he'd found everything he'd been missing. A family. A community. A life worth living. And it had all started with a beautiful woman in a blue cardigan at Gate 23, offering hope to a desperate father who thought he'd run out of options. Tyler squeezed Carolina's hand. She squeezed back, and even without words or signs, he understood what she was saying. "We made it. We're home." And they were. finally, completely, joyfully home.